She's very pretty.
And
I pay no attention to this entire thing, but even I notice she's pretty.
everybody on Twitter is like, why do you care about the royal family?
Good question.
And I said, I can care because I don't have to care. Like, that's what makes it's like pop culture. Hey everyone, I'm Alicia Krause, and we're live with our newest episode of The Conversation. This July edition, we have our very own Andrew Klavan. Hey, Andrew.
Hi.
And we will be taking live questions for an entire hour. So please remember, our conversation is live for everyone to watch. We like to be inclusive that way, even though we are conservative and supposed to not include you guys, but we do. But you can only be a part of the conversation if you're a subscriber. What does that mean? You need to go click the link in our video description to ask questions and sign up. And be sure to tune in next month for our episode with Michael Knowles. It's going to be Tuesday, August 21st at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific time, and it'll be me and Michael on this couch in his studio. This couch has kind of become a staple of the conversation now.
Don't sit this close to Michael on this couch.
It's really uncomfortable.
I know.
mean, I've said numerous times before, can we just give me some space,
Keep your hands
guys?
to yourself. That's what you have. You just have to say that to him repeatedly.
Earlier, he was trying on shirts, and he's like, what should I wear? Or should I wear this? And I'm like, yes, wear all of the shirts. Just cover it all up. I was a part of the Valentine's Day promo. I don't need to relive that nightmare. Anyway, but it's good to have you here.
It's nice to be here, as
been
always.
A while.
Yes, it has. Although I see you from time to time wandering around
the halls.
Yeah.
People wonder what I do around here. Just wander the halls. That's all I do.
It's an important job. Somebody's got to do it.
We got our first question. You ready to roll?
I'm ready.
Great. This question is from Ben. He says, hi, Andrew. In the past, you've said that works of fiction like Arthurian legends helped bring you over to Christianity. Can you give us some more details about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I started out reading the tough guy writers because I was looking kind of for male role models. And a lot of their books were based on Arthurian legends. So I turned to Arthurian legends. And all the Arthurian legends are center around Christian iconography, the Holy Grail, and things like that. That ultimately led me to read more about Christianity, just because I wanted to be a writer and know more about the culture.
So you wanted to understand the background of it.
Yeah, it seemed that this was at the core of every work I saw. And I just thought, well, if I'm going to be a writer, I want to know what people are writing about. That's when my father caught me reading the New Testament and screamed at me for half an hour. You know?
Wait, he did?
Yeah, absolutely. He was afraid I would convert. Silly him.
Turns out.
Yeah.
Question from Steven. Who do you see playing you, Ben, and Michael in the unauthorized Daily Wire biopic?
I think for me it is Bruce Willis, definitely, because he's got the hairline.
Yeah,
you know?
totally.
I think, and for
Rugged,
Ben,
good looks.
I don't know. We'd have to find a young Jeff Goldblum for Ben. And,
I actually think Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
That's an excellent
Right?
suggestion. You better answer than mine.
Right.
I will concede to your answer. And Knowles, you got to be kidding
Scott
me.
Baio.
Is he still alive?
Yeah, he's a Donald Trump supporter,
Oh,
isn't he?
yeah, Scott Baio is a Donald Trump supporter. No, we need somebody young and vibrant, like, gosh, who's that girl who played the... Oh, never mind.
Rachel Maddow.
Hey, wait a minute. He should play himself. He's an actor.
He should play himself. He would probably want to be that person that plays himself.
Exactly.
The late and wonderful Fred Thompson played himself in a movie.
That's right.
Isn't that how he got his acting start, I believe?
Did he?
I think that's how he got his acting start. We'll have to Google that.
All right.
But if you want to get, experience in acting and writing like yourself,
Yes.
should someone like me just go check out Skillshare?
Yeah, you got to go to Skillshare, of course. Skillshare is an online learning platform with over 20,000 classes in business, design, technology, all kinds of things. You can take classes in social media marketing, illustration, data science, mobile photography, creative writing, you name it, they've got it. I've tested it out. I've looked at their writing lessons. They're really good. I've looked at some of their music stuff and podcasting. Whether you're trying to deepen your professional skill set, start a side hustle, or just explore a new passion, Skillshare is there to keep you learning and thriving. Join the millions of students already learning on Skillshare and me, who continues to use it, with a special offer just for my listeners. Get 2 months of Skillshare for only 99 cents. That's right. Skillshare is offering the Andrew Klavan Show listeners and listeners to this conversation 2 months of unlimited access to over 20,000 classes for just 1 penny under a buck. To sign up, go to Skillshare.com/Andrew, Skillshare.com/Andrew. Andrew to start 2 months now for just 99 cents. Skillshare.com/Andrew.
I frequently grocery shop for my family, and I don't think there's a thing at the grocery store you can find for 99 cents.
That's true. I mean, you can get those things where you throw the ball up and catch it in a cup. I think that's about it.
So I mean, that's a great deal for our listeners. The next question is from Phoebe. She says, when I was in public high school, I had trouble reading, so I was taken out of class every day and put in a small room to work on my reading. My dad thinks this was abuse. How can we help kids like me?
I do not think that that's abuse. I mean, I don't know, but it doesn't seem like it's abuse. Very tough, especially if you're in a public school. There aren't that many facilities for you. I think that what you need is each school should have a special learning teacher, and if they can't handle you, they should move you to schools for people like yourself.
There's a lot of private schools, specifically here in the LA area, that I've heard about that have kind of those types of teachers for kids that are struggling in a certain topic, or they help them do their homework in like the kind of after hours time.
And fair schools will tell you, we can't handle what you've got. You've got to go to a different place. But look, I think you have to give this school some slack when you call it abuse to give the kids special lessons and put them in a school. That's not what abuse looks like. It looks a lot worse.
Joel says, Clavantimus?
Clavantimus Prime.
Yeah, like Optimus Prime. And then he says Prime Day, LOL. You say you're borderline Catholic. Have you looked at the Orthodox? I'm under the Oriental branch, includes Coptic, Ethiopian, Armenian, Syrian, and Indian.
Well, ever since I expressed my dissatisfaction with the mainstream Episcopal Church because they've been talking about taking gendered words out of their Book of Common Prayer, which is absurd, not because God has a gender, but because the Bible has decreed that this is a good way of referring to God. Ever since I've said that, people have been recommending their churches. I've got a lot of recommendations.
Knowles really wants you to come over to Catholicism.
Oh man, the Catholics, the Catholics and the Mormons, they came after me hard. But I have a certain problem that I actually discussed with Knowles for several hours the other day, which is that I do not want anyone else describing the moral reality to me in such a way that I can't override them if my conscience and scripture reading and theology reading declares that they're right, that they're wrong and I'm right. I'm Huck Finn.
And that's the Pope.
I'm Huck Finn.
Yeah.
In the end, I'll go to hell if it means doing the right thing.
All right. I'm so sorry. Probably not going to be Catholic anytime soon, but the Mormons can keep trying. Yeah. Aaron says, Jesua always makes your hair look stunning.
She does. I have
I don't know if that was for you or for me.
No, it's me, I think. I have a full head of hair. We look almost exactly alike before Jess gets through with me. And then this is how I turn out.
This is all contour and curling iron, folks. Veronica says, Lord Clavanius? Man, y'all, I cannot read these. Give us writers some practical tips. How do you manage multiple projects at a time, and how do you maintain your narrative voice while reading other authors? That's actually really good, because I find that I don't even write fiction like you do, but when I'm writing an opinion piece, there's all the words or the tweets or the articles that I've read from other people, including here at the Daily Wire, that I want to make sure I'm not just projecting their thoughts and get mine out on paper. How do you do that in your political writing and in your fiction writing?
Well, first of all, it's practice. As I was coming up, every writer steals from other writers as they come up. You read Hemingway, you write like Hemingway for a couple of months. You read Henry James, suddenly all your sentences get very complex. But over time, you start to develop a natural voice, which is usually, for most writers, it's usually several voices. It's not just one voice. You have a number of voices that you can turn to and even imitate other voices if you need to. But it is something that you learn. That's something that you learn over time. I forgot what the first part of that question was. They asked.
How do you, like when you're reading
how do you manage multiple projects? That may be the single hardest thing I do, because I do have to do multiple projects. You have to separate them. It is more tiring in a day to do 3 projects than it is to do one project over the same amount of time. If you have to keep changing your mind, it's a lot of mental effort. So I schedule my time very, very carefully. I know exactly how much time I have. I know exactly what I'm going to use it for. I know exactly where I'm going to get rest and stop, and I'm not afraid to stop if I have to. And those are the things you learn over time.
Our very own boss and friend of yours, Ben Shapiro, has said that you are the most scheduled person he has ever met.
Yeah, I am a very, very disciplined person, because, the day has a beginning and it has an end, and you want to get as much in as possible.
All righty. Yeah. Evan says, fearless leader, can you do the can-can?
I hope that's for you, but if it's for me, no. No, I should say.
You can't do the can-can.
I can't, yeah.
Ryan says, hi, Andrew. Is it possible for an author to create and write for a character that is more intelligent than them? Does this question even make sense?
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. Indeed, it is possible. I mean, you do it through reading people who are more. I don't have this problem because there is nobody more intelligent than I am.
So, if you were to create a rocket scientist,
right? You read
in a book,
you read it, do the research and find out how we would say it. The best kind of research I find begins with finding somebody you can talk to and speaking to them directly, because people use slang, they use words that nobody else uses. Research is really key to doing this stuff. But you can write anybody. This is one of the things that drives me crazy about this kind of intersectional movement where they say actors can't play, a white person can't play a black person.
Well, you can't write about.
Of course, I can write about anybody. I can write anybody. And if a man can write a woman, he can write anybody, because that is the biggest distance between two people is gender.
That's a good point. Raymond says, Andy Millennial, wouldn't we do tons better with crime and economy if we got rid of the big cities? Can everyone from on top get everyone I think he means off of being on top of each other?
It's funny. I'm not particularly a city mouse, though I've spent a lot of my time in cities. But cities have a lot to offer, and people like cities. I think when people are brought together who have similar ideas, similar thoughts, when they can argue, when they can associate with each other, good things come of it. I mean, when we think of the great moments like the Renaissance and Victorian England, there's always a city very much involved. And there are always people like Wordsworth, one of my heroes, who goes off into the country and says, you know what, I'm going to do this my own way. William Faulkner goes off and does that. But a lot of people hang around cities. Yeah, cities come with problems. They come with problems like crime. Those problems, I have to say, they can be dealt with. When you look at New York, great city, very low crime ever since Giuliani took care of it there with Bratton and his police chiefs. So I just think these are problems that come up, but the problem shouldn't get rid of the source of so much creativity, originality, and humanity.
All right. Luke says, if you could enslave anyone to do a podcast at the Daily Wire, who would it be?
I would never enslave anyone. I mean,
we're capitalists. We'd pay them, and then they'd come over.
I don't know. The podcast is a very strange form. I mean, you think of think of guys who are eloquent and interesting, like Jordan Peterson. We had him over the other day, and he was great. But you don't know if they're going to do a podcast. Well, when I sat down to do it, I had no idea whether I would be any good at it or not. It's just a very, very specific form. So you want people who feel comfortable. The reason I wouldn't enslave anybody is you want somebody who feels comfortable, somebody who is really going to be good, not just one day, because anybody can do it for one day, but somebody's going to come on every day and have something new to say as things change. And I wasn't sure that was suitable for me as someone who likes to sit and think about things before I open my big mouth. So I'm not sure which people would be great. I think Norm Macdonald, who I think does have a podcast, I'd love to have him here.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, Norm, if you're watching, come on over. We'll set you up with the God King, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Richard,
who loves him? We all love Norm Macdonald.
Richard says, do you use an outline or just start writing?
Oh, man, I'm a big outliner.
Really?
I think people, for fiction, I think people who don't outline are out of their minds because you really can get like 300 pages into something and realize, oh my gosh, if I didn't put the gun here on page 3, it's not going to be here on page 300, and the whole story doesn't make sense. You have to go back and break it down. It's not like screenwriting where you can just switch things around. You really have to go through every page and make sure everything fits. So outlines are incredibly important to me. They allow me, most importantly, to just write, which is what I love. Outlining is the most boring part of my job. But once it's done, I can just write. And so every day is a joy after
It's
that.
like a roadmap.
Yeah.
So
and I can change it anytime I want. But
right.
still.
Change the 101 to the 405. And then, this is a whole new world. I do not understand this. So it's always fascinating to hear your answers. Spencer says, in your opinion, how can we best discover God's will for our lives? How should we distinguish God's will for us from what merely happens to us?
Right. I mean, I think that this is a very, very difficult problem. You really have to learn how to listen for God, how to talk to God, and how not to take coincidences as God's will. Listen, God is always operating in your life, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to hook your will into His. You're trying to do His will instead of yours, which frequently is just broken. This is what I find. I find my own will is broken. I want things for myself I shouldn't have. I want to try things that I know I'm not going to be able to, that ultimately I know I'm not going to be able to do. Whereas if I listen to God's will, I find that I can do things I never thought I could do, and I can make things work out that shouldn't work out at all. And so that's what you want to do. And I think you do it just the way you do it with any human being, really. You talk to someone and you start to listen to the tone of their voice and when they're telling you something that you need to listen to. And it really is practice over time. You should never think that the things that happen are necessarily written in stone, and you should certainly never think that coincidence is a revelation. It really has to do with communicating with God in your life.
Okay. Anthony says, hey, Andrew, as an artist that is conservative, do you believe that conservative artists need to be more like, I do not know how to pronounce this name.
Bertolt Brecht.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
As in create art that promotes conservative values.
No, I think that what we need is we need conservative artists. We don't need we need artists who are conservatives. We don't need conservatives to create art.
This is a big question, I think, from the evangelical community when it comes to creating Christian art, or Christian movies, or Christian music.
It's so bad. Yeah. Christian music, almost all political art is bad. What you want is somebody who has a conservative point of view to create the art that his muse or God gives him to create. That's what you want. And one of the reasons that conservative art is so bad is because, first of all, we don't have the studios to make a lot of it. So you get that one guy who just comes in. But secondly, because we want it to communicate, we want conservative art to look like conservative life. It doesn't. Shakespeare doesn't look like conservative life. Tosca doesn't look like conservative life. Great stories. One of the most conservative, one of my favorite works of my lifetime is The Sopranos, which is filled with nudity, murder, filth, filthy language. It's a deeply, deeply conservative and instructive piece of work. And that's what you need. And it takes an artist to do that, not a conservative.
All right. So speaking of being an artist, people want to take art classes to kind of figure out hobby professionally.
They got to go to Skillshare.
Exactly.
Skillshare, it's a terrific thing. It's an online learning platform with over 20,000 classes in just about everything. Business, design, technology. You get the whole class. An expert teaches it in a series of videos. You can take social media marketing, illustration, data science, mobile photography, creative writing, you name it. And it's one price, and then you're in. It doesn't stop and charge you more as they go along. And whether you're trying to deepen your professional skill set, start a side business, or just explore a new passion, Skillshare is there to keep you learning and thriving. I have tested their things just for my audience. I've tested their writing lessons, and they're very, very good. I've looked at things for myself, like how to do a podcast when we wanted to do Another Kingdom. Right now, I'm looking at a lot of their music videos. You too can join the millions of students already learning on Skillshare with a special offer. Get 2 months of Skillshare for just 99 cents. That's amazing. Skillshare is offering my listeners 2 months of unlimited access to over 20,000 classes for just 99 cents. Alicia will divide that and tell you what that costs a class. I won't. To sign up, go to Skillshare.com/Andrew. Go to Skillshare.com/Andrew to start your 2 months now. That's Skillshare.com/Andrew.
I definitely need to pull out a calculator for that one. But it's real cheap,
just
folks.
see how it goes.
Veronica says, Andrew, really, how do we stop California? What do you mean, Veronica? We live here. You can't destroy us. She said she read today that San Francisco is registering illegals to vote. And what can we, the people, do to fight against this and the other awful things our state does?
Well, first, I think what we should do is take a bandsaw along the border and just cut it until it goes out to sea. Make sure I'm in Nevada when it happens.
Are you a fan of the 5-state solution,
yes,
or the 7 states, or the breakup of these states?
I believe in doing anything we can to stop California from being what it is. It is the worst. It's one of the worst run states in the union. It would be paradise if leftists weren't in charge of it. It could be so much more than it is. The drought is the fault of the droughts we have are the fault of leftists. Not that there aren't droughts here, but how bad they are is their fault. San Francisco is now just a cesspool. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and it looks like garbage. LA is a homeless center. It is just disgusting. And the fact that they can keep doing it while people don't pay any attention to it is the fact that we have no media here that covers it. Or they just hide it all and blame right-wingers for everything. So I think what can we do? Busting it up is one place to start.
But then the problem with that, my only negative to that, is then you have potentially a lot more federal senators that are super liberal.
Well, maybe so and maybe not. I mean, because the thing is, there are plenty of conservative enclaves in this state, and so maybe you put some of those aside. Don't gerrymander it so that the liberals get everything. But the thing is, big is generally bad. Big generally doesn't work. One of the wonderful things about the federal process is it lets people test out different ways of being. Sure, the part of the state with LA in it is going to be more liberal than other parts, but let it happen and see what goes on. Because I think that when you look at Texas, how well that's run under Republican rule, endless Republican rule, and then you look at California and how bad it is. If Silicon Valley weren't here, this place would be gone.
Interesting. Derek says, Andrew, what do you think about getting an English degree? Will leftist professors grade me poorly on purpose?
That is what I've heard, and I think a lot of the liberal arts degrees have been destroyed by leftists. In other words, instead, when I was an English major, I wish I'd been a history major, but I was an English major. And what you learned as an English major is you came in and you started with Beowulf, and by the time you were finished, you had read the moderns, and you really knew the history of English literature. I remember walking down the street one day when I suddenly realized that history had a path, that things had happened over time, and that Shakespeare had read Virgil, and Dickens had read Shakespeare, and they were all affecting one another. And so you did learn something. When I talk to English majors today, they've never read Shakespeare. If you've never read Shakespeare, you are not an English major. You don't know anything about the English language. You don't know anything about the formation of your own mind. You don't know anything about the formation out of your heritage. A good conservative, you should look into it first.
Feasible for conservatives to
the conspiracies that work the other way around. Like people always tell me that liberals are doing this and doing that. I never really see that being that effective, so I doubt it would be effective for us either.
That seems more timely than my method, which is be fruitful and multiply.
No, I think that's the best method.
If liberals are only having like 1.2 children.
I know.
And between
10.
the Shapiros and our family, if we can have like 20.
That's it.
I mean, looky there.
I think that works. The Muslims do this. It should work for us.
All right. Will says, I was watching Tucker Carlson interview where he was interviewing an illegal immigrant business owner. How can he legally own a business, and why don't we deport him as he admitted to being an illegal?
Well, this is a serious problem. I do not want to hurt. I understand that some people are having a hard time. They want to come here. I want people to come here. I think it refreshes. The problem is not with any individual illegal person. That is not fair. That's not where to look at the problem. The problem is with a feckless Congress that does not fix the laws. And they do it. I mean, you saw Chuck Schumer the other day waving his pen around saying, Donald Trump should just sign an order and fix everything. No, you guys sit down, compromise, make laws, risk being voted out of office, and do what needs to be done to fix our immigration system so we can get the people we need, but also keep out people who we don't want. It seems like, you can't get 100% of what you want. We understand it's a divided government. It's supposed to be a divided government, but do something. These guys are just cowards. It is feckless cowardice, and we shouldn't be blaming the guy who came over to get a better life. We should be blaming Congress and who will not pass laws that can be reasonably enforced.
All right. Veronica says, oh, bald and handsome one.
I love Veronica.
She must really think you look like Bruce Willis today. My mom wants to know how old you were when your voice started to sound like that. It's just lovely, darling.
I love this person. It's funny. I have 3 brothers, and my father and my son, we all have the exact same voice. In fact, you can hear messages on our tape machines, and I know it's not my father, he's gone, but my brothers all sound the same. We all had big radio voices, and my voice started to change when I was about 13, but my mother always told me that I would, when I was little, how little kids ride around in the push cart, that I would look at the cereal and say things like, I would like one of those. And everybody would stop and look around. So I guess it was early.
You always sounded very masculine and deep. Philip says, I really like this girl, but she likes guys like you and idolizes you. What can I do to win her heart?
Well, first of all, you've made a good choice. This is a woman with excellent taste.
Impeccable taste.
And I think you just have to become a witty, elegant, intelligent, well-learned person, and then she'll forget all about me.
Who has books turned into movies by Clint Eastwood. Can you do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good luck with that. Yeah. Jonathan says, hi, Andrew. In an article by Ryan Saavedra, he shares some information from Fox News indicating that the economy has been improving since 2011. How can Trump be credited with the current economic status?
Well, here's the thing. When the economy crashes, like it did in 2008, a major crash, it has a natural tendency to rebound very quickly, in a very big way. Obama did everything he could to sit on that rebound, only because he doesn't know anything, because he thinks he knows stuff and he doesn't. And so the economy did rebound, but it rebounded at this 1% growth, this kind of steady, slow thing. And all he did was put a little bit of animal spirits into the business community by saying things are going to go great and I'm going to back you, pulling out regulations and cutting taxes. And the more he does that, the more the economy will rebound. We are really having the rebound we would have had under Obama if he hadn't done all that leftist nonsense in the healthcare bill that kept it slow. So in other words, when people say, oh, well, the economy was coming back under Obama, I agree. The economy would have come back. And the American economy is so resilient, it would have come back if you just put a gigantic rock over it. We did. Obama was that giant rock. But I think it still was vibrant enough to come back. All Trump has done really is get the government out of the way.
I would also add, I think it's an interesting case study too, under the Obama and the Trump years, to look at states with Republican-led legislatures and governors as well, because even under Obama, you still saw Republican states like Florida and Texas that were thriving despite all the regulations he was throwing down.
Exactly. Well, that is the great thing about the federal, the federal system is you can, compete like that. Yeah.
Philip says, what did you think of Sacha Baron Cohen's latest show that mocks Republicans and the NRA?
Well, I'm glad you asked this question because I hate this guy. And I think he's talented. I think he's funny. I think he stinks. I think when you take, the thing is, this is what I call the tyranny of cool. If somebody is cool, and Cohen is cool, he's outrageous and he's funny and he's all those things. If somebody's cool,
got all the right friends. He's in the Hollywood in crowd.
Absolutely. You start to think, well, there must be something good about him. But that's not true. People can be cool and really be jerks. And it is a jerky, stinky thing to do, to go to ordinary people with the power of a Hollywood film behind you and make fun of them. And he always makes fun of ordinary people in what they call flyover country, in the middle of the country. He makes fun of conservatives. He makes fun of people with values who want to, have manners and things like that. That makes him even worse. But that's not what I dislike. What I dislike is he fools people who are better men than he is. He'll fool cops. He'll fool firemen. He'll, fool people who serve their country. And I think it's funny, and it's witty, and it's original, and it stinks. And I don't see why we can't say those things all together. A person can be talented. It's like Eminem. I used to listen to Eminem and think, yeah, he's talented. What he's saying is disgusting. It does not, having talent, I'm not trying to be prissy or, I'm happy to see outrageous stuff. But just because you're doing outrageous stuff doesn't mean you're not doing a bad thing. Remember, the people that he's making fun of are real people. Even if he was making fun of them in fictional work, I would say that would be fine. I might not like his opinions, but that would be fine. But the fact that he uses and abuses real people, I just think is wrong.
Interesting. Jeremiah says, king of the multiverse, Klavan, you rag on the administrative state / deep state / EPA constantly. Did this soapbox arise from personal experience or just reading and observing?
From observing and from reading and from principle. I mean, the funny thing is people like us don't get affected by the deep state or the administrative state because the First Amendment protects us. So the First Amendment essentially says you can't make regulations against speech. You can't do it. So they go, well, we'll change that. They tried to change it. Every Democrat has tried to change it. But they can't because the First Amendment is so ingrained in American culture. They want to, but they can't. But if you have a different kind of business, say you make car engines, or say you make plows, or whatever you make, say
a restaurant.
you have a restaurant, they just go nuts and they come in and tell you how far off the floor your windows have to be and how this has to happen. Look. Everything we do is regulated. I mean, you and I can get in an argument, but I can't hit you. Then we have a regulation against that. That's
but
fine.
I hit you?
Yes, you can hit me. Of course, I kind of enjoy it. It's fine. Sick, but there I am. But no, everything is regulated. So we need simple, straightforward regulations. Keep your food clean, keep your restaurant clean, and all this stuff. But these guys come to work every day and write more and more regulations. Each one of those has a cost on a guy's business, and each one of them takes his choices and his ideas about how to run a business, takes it away. Some of the stuff we see where lemonade stands are being shut down because they don't have permits. That's the deep state. And that I just find that incredibly offensive, unconstitutional and un-American.
So let me ask you a question that Michael and I asked on Friday Live a couple weeks ago because The Purge came out. So if there were no laws for 12 hours, what would you do?
I think I'd rebuild my house and probably cut down a couple of trees.
Oh my gosh, I said almost the same thing, except I added I would go to the IRS in the state of California, take back every penny I'd ever paid in tax dollars and use that money to remodel my house.
The other thing I would do is blow up the EPA and then salt the ground where it had been, I think.
But a lot of our listeners said they would would start a lemonade stand because then it would be actually legal. Love our listeners. Kate says, Dear Mr. Klavan, I really enjoyed your Audible novel from 2008 recently. Do you think you inherited your dad's talent for voices?
Oh, I wish I had, but I really did not. My father was one of the great voice men of his era. I mean, there's that guy's name escapes me, but that guy who does Abu in The Simpsons.
Oh, yeah.
He is one of the great. He's probably Hank Azaria. Thank you. He's probably the great one now. My father was one of the great ones of his generation. He could do any accent. He could do a double talk in Italian to a real Italian, and for about 2 minutes, the Italian would think he was speaking Italian before he started to catch on that it was all double talk. That's how good he was. I have a certain amount of skill with my voice. I have a certain amount of reading skill. I can do a range of voices, but he could just do about anything with his voice. It was really quite amazing. And my older brother got it, but I didn't.
Interesting. Yeah. Joel J says, Old Man Klavan, what are your thoughts on video games, anime, and the international content like Bollywood? Can we express conservative themes in these alt mediums? And he wants to get Bill Whittle as a guest on your show.
I love Bill. Bill is welcome on my show anytime. I love video games. I play video games all the time.
You do?
Yeah, no.
I would not have pegged you as a video game
No,
guy.
I do. I don't have a lot of time for it. So what happens to me sometimes is I lose the train of the plot because I don't get to play as much as I want. But I love video games, and I think that they are really the repository of visual arts. I think I'd much rather see the art in a video game than go to a museum and watch like Jackson Pollock baloney, splatters on a wall. I think that's great, and sure, you can get any kind of values into your content if you just make them. If you just make them out of your heart and out of yourself, and you have those values will come across. I'm less aware of anime. Like I know what it is, and I've seen it, but I don't really know that much about it. But all these things are vehicles for communication. Almost any craft that involves the human person can be turned into an art. Like, in other words, I don't believe that an Indian rug can be an art. I believe it can be beautiful crafts, but it's just shapes, and that's not art to me. I agree, this is one of the very few things I agree with Ayn Rand about, that art is about human beings. And so anything that really deals with human beings in an honest way can be elevated to the level of art, including graphic novels and anime and the rest. Interesting.
Philip says, do you think that Bill Maher gave Ben Shapiro a fair shot on his show?
Yes, I did. And I thought I thought Ben did a great job. It's funny, when you watch your friends do this, you're always thinking, oh, why didn't he say that? And why didn't he say, but then you remember, he's the man in the arena. And Ben went into this arena where a completely hostile audience, a completely hostile guy talking to him. And that section where Ben schooled him on what Trump has done in Russia was fantastic. And I even liked the thing where Maher was talking about civility. I feel more strongly that the left has been uncivil to us for 50 years. Every time you call somebody racist, you're insulting them, and that's all they ever do.
Yeah.
But I thought Ben handled himself extremely well and extremely calmly in a very, very difficult arena. It's always, like I said, you can always pick apart things, especially when your pals do them. It gets easy. But I thought he walked into a very difficult arena and did great.
Not many people could do that.
No.
Or would.
No. Yeah.
Nat says, hey, Andrew, I found it easy to talk about what you know, but you sure look like an idiot when you can't counter something from an opposing voice because, well, you intellectually can. So any tips there?
Yeah, I mean, you got to read a lot. You got to know, because they can always get you. If you watch leftists argue, by the way, they keep changing the subject until they find something you don't know about. Yeah. And one of the things that I like to do when I talk to leftists is just point out what they're doing. So, for instance, one of the things that leftists love to do is they like to take your joke seriously and then hold you to account as if your joke was real. So you're left with this kind of weak answer. Well, that was just a joke, So what I do is I say, you're using that. I will just say to the person, you're using that leftist technique of taking my joke seriously, but that's really a dishonest thing to do. Or I'll say, well, wait, you just changed the subject hoping you'd get to something that I don't know anything about, but let's go back to what we were talking about. But you need, in order to argue, in order to debate, and I'm not a big debater, by the way, because I rather talk. I'd rather hear.
Like dialogue.
I like to hear what the other person is saying. But in order to debate, and in order to make your case, you better know what you're talking about, and you better have the facts and not just a bunch of kind of ill-formed opinions. I think that's the key.
Okay. Jeremiah Peterson, brave guy putting both names up there, first and last. Lord of the Multiverse Klavan. I am not a naturally disciplined person, so how can I work on developing that kind of mindset that you described?
A little bit at a time. That's what you do. I mean, everything you do, I've done this with just about everything. I actually have two tips for this. One is do it a little bit of a time and move move it up. So if you want to exercise, do 1 push-up, then wait a month and do 2 push-ups, and then whatever you think you can handle. I always try to do a little less than I think I can handle, so I don't fall back. I would rather only start with 5 push-ups, knowing I can do 10, than start with 10 and find I could only do 8. Because then you stop.
You got to build the momentum.
Yes, and the other thing I always do when I'm taking on a new discipline is I try to think about it positively. If I'm trying to lose weight, I don't think about losing weight. That's a negative thing. I think about eating healthily and eating well and looking good and feeling good about myself. That's the kind of attitude I try to have. If I cut down, I went through a long process of cutting down on my drinking because I just felt it crept.
Why?
I know, I love it so much, but it crept up on me, and I started to think, you know what, I'm not waking up feeling as good as I should, so I cut it down. And I would always just concentrate on the fact that when you don't drink, you can stay up later, you can read. If you wake up in the middle of the night, you feel fine and you can read. And I would just concentrate on the positive aspects of it. So start small, move up in an orderly, but a slow but orderly way, and think about it positively.
Okay. So please remember that our conversation is live for everyone to watch, but you can only be a part of it if you're a subscriber. And if you want to do that, you should go over to dailywire.com and click the link in our video description to ask questions or sign up. And be sure to tune in for our next episode. It's going to be on Tuesday, August 21st at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific. And it's going to feature our very own Michael Knowles.
So you want to get your answers in now while they're still true.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Yeah. Or sometimes the questions that come in from Michael. I don't know why, but he has a female fan base. Do you know that? There's chicks that have crushes on him.
Well, no, that makes sense to me. Women are very self-destructive sometimes, right?
I apologize for my gender, but why? So Philip says, what should one do if you keep what should one do if you keep failing at doing what you love? This sounds like a very Mike Rowe type question to me.
I think you can adjust. I think that if you keep failing at it, there's a reason you keep failing at it. There could be all kinds of reasons. One, you might be doing it wrong. One, you might not have the skill to do exactly what you think you love. Like with people, if you keep falling in love with people who hurt you, you're doing it wrong. So I think that there are all kinds of reasons, but you know what? Assess them. Assess it. Why did you fail? Why did you fail the last time? Is it like the same time you failed the time before? Is there something you keep doing over and over again? And I think that way you can move forward. You may not get, if what you want is a very, very specific goal, you may not get it. I always remember Kirk Douglas, one of the famous, biggest movie stars of the 50s, right? He said, I wanted to be a theater actor, and I always thought of myself as a failed theater actor. And I thought, well, then you're just thinking wrong, man. You were one of the biggest movie stars in the world, but you didn't get to do exactly what you wanted. You modified it and did something else. I think that's fine. You'll be perfectly happy with that if you keep your attitude positive.
All right. Mike says, I'm really interested in how you developed your schedule. I'm such a bad procrastinator. It really hurts me. I tend to come up with so many ideas, but never act on them because I never know where to start.
Well, that is an important thing, that you do have to do a thing. You cannot do a million things. You just won't do it. So you do have to pick something. I always feel, I'm sure a lot of people with my discipline have this. I always feel that there's something else I should be doing while I'm doing it.
Oh, and that's hashtag being a parent.
Exactly. You just put it aside and do the thing that you're going to do. I'm very big on finishing things. I know that there's some things that shouldn't be finished and I abandon them, but I'm very big. My first instinct is always to finish something and then, go back and make it better and all this stuff. Don't try to make it perfect the first time. Go back and make it better. So, I just think it's discipline. You got to start again. And with discipline, it's the same thing. Elmore Leonard, the great mystery writer, used to tell people, wake up an hour earlier, do an hour of work, and then go about the rest of your day. Do an hour of writing, and then do about the rest of your day. And he said he always knew when he gave that advice if he was talking to someone who could be a writer, because they just nodded and took the advice. If they said, well, if I wake up an hour early, he said he knew they were never going to do it.
Interesting. Yeah. Andrew says, hey, Andrew, have you watched any of the hashtag walkaway videos? What do you think about them?
I've watched a little bit. I certainly watched the original one, and I've seen a couple pieces of them, and I think it's great. There is nothing like this on the left. There's nobody walking away from the right to become a left-winger. There just isn't. Everything about them is small-minded, mean, pinched, censorious, and misguided. So once you see, one of the wonderful things about conservatism And by conservatism, I mean a love of freedom. That's all I mean. I mean, just like loving people, not just for me to be free, but for you to be free, for us to be able to disagree, for us to not associate or associate, all those things that come along with American life, with American freedom. One of the things about it is once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you see what it means to be free, you can't unsee it. And once you see how much we've been lied to and how many people want power over your lives and how many people are selling you a vision that life will be better if you just let other people have power over your lives. Once you see that, you can't unsee it and you're free. And I think of the walk away movement, just like the red pill movement, is a great thing.
Okay. Jeremy says, do you see a gradual thawing of the left and the right post-Trump, or will things continue to escalate?
Well, nobody knows the future. I could really see, let's take a good scenario, though, a possible good scenario. Trump is a divisive figure. You know, he really does divide people, and for some very good reasons. But he's also doing a good job as president. I mean, the economy is doing well. The judges that he's appointing are good. Rolling back regulations is a good thing. So I could actually see that him serving 2 terms and then a more moderate, not a more moderate conservative, a conservative, but a more moderate personality taking over, and people kind of going like, enough of the drama, enough of the yelling, enough of this. Yet continuing in in that conservative path. I mean, I don't know if Mike Pence, who I love, I don't know if he has what it takes to run for, be president. He's probably still, because of his religion, he's probably still a little bit more divisive. It may be that the left hates America so much that no pro-American politician will win their hearts. But you don't have to win their hearts. You have to win everybody else's hearts. And I could really see that happening.
Okay. Andrew says, hey, Andrew, in Mona Sharon's latest book, Sex Matters, she says that the divide between college-educated women and non-educated men is making it more difficult to marry today. What can we do to solve this?
Well, I think that it really is a problem. But I do think that part of it is that college, for some men, has become useless. If it's just become a kind of left-wing brainwashing machine, why do it? So I think that, women should take a look. Maybe women shouldn't think about credentials as much as the person who's there. What is he doing with his life? What are his ambitions? If you see an ambitious man who has a plan, who has skill, who's ready to work to hone his skill and ready to work to put his skill into operation, maybe you shouldn't worry so much about whether he has a degree, as long as, obviously you might not want to marry an idiot, but maybe you shouldn't worry so much about his credentials and worry more about who the man is.
But being the devil's advocate here, I would think that it's more difficult to be a woman with a degree and get a man without a degree interested in you, because sometimes men are intimidated by that.
Intimidated by it? Maybe, I don't know. It does. I can see where it's a problem, and I also think college is a great place for men and women to meet each other. If they play their cards right, it's a good place.
Especially Christian college. I mean, come on. There's lots of people out there that go for their MRS degree.
That's what they're looking for.
I did not know until I went to college.
No, that is absolutely true. So, I do think that anything that divides us divides men and women is a difficulty. But I do think also that women have to, if it's going to become
the only one.
There's only strategy of it. I love back to life because I don't have a lot of time to watch sports. So that's my favorite sport right now. I also do like baseball. I'm kind of excited that LeBron James is coming to LA. That may bring me back to the LA Lakers, who I watched religiously when Shaquille and what's his name, Kobe were on the team. But I do love sports, and you ask what they can teach you. I mean, I think they teach you a couple of things. One is that what excellence looks like and what it takes to be excellent, which is really important. And the other is that certain things don't yield. If the other team has more points than you do, they win. And talking about it doesn't mean a thing. And I think that makes you better to face life that way, to know when you've lost, to know when you've won, to know that when you want to win, you have to be excellent, and to know that even when you're excellent, you sometimes won't win. I think that's a lot of things that sports can deliver.
Got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
That's poker, but yeah.
Diana says, when you have to do research for a work of fiction, do you do it yourself or have others help and spearhead it for you?
Both. I will do certain things myself, but if I have a lot of interviews to do, I love hiring someone who'll go and get me the interviews, because it's very hard for me to do it. Other people are better at it than I am. There's certain kinds of reading you have to do by yourself, certain interviews that you have to do by yourself. But if I can get somebody, there are things where, like, if I'm going to write scenes in the past, somebody else might say, I might say to somebody else, go find out what people dress like, what they just get me a book. They'll make you a book. People who work in movies do this.
Wow.
They'll make you a book that'll just show you what people looked like and thought like. I still have to do a lot of reading myself. But I love hiring somebody who can set up the interviews for me and find some of the material.
Interesting. Philip says, how do you win arguments against leftists that ignore facts and go on feelings only?
You can't. I mean, it's like, it is amazing, especially amazing with guns, where you can explain to people why we have the right to bear arms. You can explain to people that the more gun ownership has gone up, the more the murder rate has gone down. You can explain that we're living in a low crime era, somewhat in part because of guns. They don't care. Those things, they go bang and people bleed and they're scary and they just will not listen to you. But you can't win an argument with anybody who doesn't believe in facts. I mean, right or left. I mean, facts are what arguments are about, right? I mean, you're arguing about the facts and you're arguing about different approaches to the facts. It's fair to have different approaches to the facts, but it's not fair to have different facts.
Okay. Matthew says, it seems many young people don't love America anymore. Why do you think that is? And do you think this is a problem?
I certainly think it's a problem. And the reason I think the left has constructed this, they did it on purpose. They emptied our schools of civic learning, why we are the way we are. I talk to college kids, even conservative college kids, they don't know why we're the way we are. They don't know what people thought about. They don't know what the world was like before. I just saw that doofus, that woman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez,
oh, yeah.
the socialist, talking about what they ask her the question, like, what do you make of the fact that that capitalism has solved the problem of hunger and made us all wealthy? Well, that's just evolution. We're just getting to be better people. You think like, that's the vastness of your ignorance. It would be hard to chart the depth of that stupidity of somebody who would say that. But that is what they have done. They emptied out history, they emptied out philosophy, they emptied out everything except their own theory. Whenever you hear that we're teaching feminist theory or race theory or this theory, all that means is leftist propaganda laid over history, philosophy, and real thought so that you can't see why people did what they did. And I think it's been very effective.
I agree with you 100%. Philip says, is pornography really that bad or immoral, and what's wrong with moderate use?
Well, here's the thing about this. I'm not a prig about pornography. I've looked at it. I'll probably look at it again, I'm not a big pornography fan, but I'm not going to lie about it. I think guys like to look at naked women, pretty naked women. That's what they like to do. But look, it's addictive. I think it's degrading. I think it's one of the few things Erica Jong ever said that I agreed with. She said, when you look at pornography for 10 minutes, you want to have sex. When you look at it for 20 minutes, you never want to have sex ever again. And I think that there is something about that. I think it takes you away from reality. I think it takes you away from what real women are like and what it means to be with a real woman, which is a very much obviously it's a physical experience, but it's also a much deeper experience than that. And I think it creates a complete false impression of what sex is like in real life. The reason I say I'm not a prig about it is I think it can be a harmless vice. Like having like one cigarette a day or something like that. I think it's a harmless vice, but it's still a vice. And I still think it's degrading. I still think it is a degrading view of human beings. And I don't think it's a good thing. That sometimes we all do things that aren't so good. I think that's true.
Do you think that your perspective would be different if you didn't have a daughter?
No, I always felt this way about pornography. I always felt like, when you're a younger person, obviously it's something you look at more. I always felt like, it just makes me feel bad about myself at some level that I can't quite figure out what it is. No, I don't think it required a daughter to make me feel like this. It's funny. I have not always been as sane a person as I am today. I've written about this at length. I've not always treated women the way I wish I had treated women, but I always liked women. I've always gotten along with them. Ever since I've grown up, they've taken care of me in many, many ways, like lots of women. And I think I've been very grateful to them all my life. So I've always felt this way about women. I don't want them, I don't want to abuse them. I don't want to hurt them. And I don't think pornography has to be about sadism all the time, but I do think it reduces people to shapes instead of humans. And I mean, I know that men are enamored of the female shape, but you do want to remember that there's a person inside there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Question, Mr. K, I have heard you mention the zing that pornography creates in your brain as something negative. However, you also mentioned the human body, particularly the female one, as a great impulse for the arts. So, how and where do you draw the line between porn and eroticism, especially for a creator to be?
Well, I think that's actually a great question, but it's also kind of an easy question. Our bodies do create these zings for various things, and one of them is when men look at women, they get this kind of zing. That means you get this feeling, you can feel it, but you want to be attaching that to the rest of your humanity. Your body is only one tool that you have to experience humanity. So, for instance, if I want to if I want to have food, I want to enjoy that food and I want it to taste good and I want to sit and savor it, but I don't want to just sit there and eat and eat and eat until until it's meaningless and it makes me sick. Things have meaning. Things are not just objects, they have meaning. Food has a meaning. Women and sex and love have meaning. And I think what true erotic art does is it brings you into the meaning of relationships, the meaning of those physical relationships. And what pornography does is it severs you from that. It severs you. It's meaningless. And if you watch pornography, you see people doing things and you think like, wow, I wish life could be that meaningless because there'd be no consequences, there'd be no responsibility, there'd be none of the effort of having human relationships. That's not what you want to be thinking. What you want to be thinking is, this zing that I feel is part of a complex of relationships that make life worthwhile.
Interesting. Richard said, does plot in fiction need to be original or have twists?
Is that a choice? I guess it is between being original or have twists. No. I mean, I think interesting. One of my better books is a book called True Crime, which I purposely wrote on a corny plot because what I wanted to do is I wanted the plot to reveal character. So I wanted you to get the plot right away and not have, it has twists and all that stuff, but I wanted you to understand, I've seen this plot before, and then find yourself swept away in the depth of the characters that were in it. It was just an experiment I did, which I thought worked out very well. I think that plotting, I like plotted stories. Not everybody does. Some people can watch a show that's just a kind of vague drama or read a book that just kind of have vague, character studies and things like that. I really like taut, original plots, and I like the moment that I love is the moment when you get what the plot is. The moment when you say, Bruce Willis is stuck without shoes in a building that's been taken over by terrorists. I get it, Or Hamlet has to, avenge his father, and he's a guy who can't make up his mind. Those are things that I happen to just love in plots. And so what I like in a plot is that moment when the character and the problem come together and you think, if that were anybody else, this wouldn't be a great story. And if that were any other story, it wouldn't be a great character, but the two of them together really make it work. But there are different kinds of stories.
Matthew says, what is your favorite vacation spot?
Oh gosh, I love Rome. I love being in Rome and love being in Italy. I love the woods. So last vacation, Ellen and I went up to Oregon and we just hiked around. So anytime I'm in the woods, I'm happy. I've never known why that is, but there's something I think there must be part of me that's like a woodland creature. I just get there and I suddenly feel that I'm in the right space. I love traveling. When we lived in England, we traveled all over the place. I love going to Africa. That was a magical trip. And so I really like, what I like best is I like a place where I can go and have one day of sitting around and one day of adventure. That's, and then I'll kind of do it back and forth. One of the greatest trips we ever took was in Hawaii when every other day we were doing something fantastic. We flew helicopters into, volcanoes and went hiking in the jungle and all. Then every other day we just sit around the beach. Yeah. And that was great. Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. I like that idea of a vacation. Yeah. A chillax day and then an adventure day.
Yep.
Dustin says, what can a writer specifically gain from reading Dostoevsky?
Oh gosh, Dostoevsky, one of the great, great novelists, and certainly the novelist with Crime and Punishment, which has the biggest effect of any novel on my personal life. I think his searing honesty and his psychology and his searing moral vision, I think, were just amazing. He really was a prophet. He was a guy who saw, because of what he saw in front of him, he saw where the country was going to go, and he saw communism coming. He saw moral relativism coming, and he addressed it from a profound Christian point of view, but not Christian the way we think of Christian, of like everything is shiny and good and great, but Christian from the idea that the world has a moral web that when you go into it bends and gives but won't break. And it's just incredibly brilliant perception into the human mind and the human heart.
Interesting. Jeremy says, what made you choose Christianity as opposed to Judaism since you were born Jewish?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I believe in Christianity because I believe it's true. I mean, it's the only reason I would believe in anything. I don't believe in it because I think it's good. I don't believe in it because I think society needs it. I believe in it because I think it is the literal truth. And that really answers the question right there. I don't know what would have happened to me if I'd been raised in a house of a true, where Judaism was taught in a true, dedicated, believing manner. I was raised in such a way that anybody of integrity would have been estranged from the whatever religion it had been. If I had been raised that way as an evangelical, I'd have been estranged from evangelicalism because I was raised to follow the patterns of the religion, but not to believe in its inner depths. So that was just hypocrisy. It's just teaching your kid hypocrisy. So I was estranged from it. I don't know what would have happened if I'd been raised with integrity into the Jewish religion. Maybe it would have satisfied me, but I still believe that it's Christianity that is telling the true story.
Fascinating. Anne says, I just listened to the podcast that you, Ben, and Michael did on the Trump-Russia meeting. You and Michael seem less harsh than Ben on the event. Why? Also, why are they calling Trump a traitor?
They're calling Trump a traitor because they got big mouths and they panic over everything. It's just utterly absurd. We did this a little bit with Obama. I felt people were calling Obama a traitor and treasonous, and I kept saying to him, the guy's a bad president, and he's an anti-American president. But I never thought he was a traitor. I'd never used those words. I think they're melodramatic words. Ben is a little harder on Trump than I am, but it's funny. One of the things I've noticed about Ben and I over the years is that we see a lot of the same things. It's not because sometimes you're talking to people and you don't see the same things at all.
That's why I love eavesdropping on your conversations in the hallway.
No, we do, and it's one of the reasons we have good discussions because we see a lot of the same things. But I'm always concerned about the country and freedom. In other words, Trump will be gone. Obama will be gone, but will freedom still be there? Will freedom be gone? That's what I'm worried about. Trump has made us more free by dialing back regulations, by putting in judges who believe in the Constitution, by helping our economy, which I think helps freedom, bolsters freedom. So he has done things that I think will make America better and more free. So when he does the things that both Ben and I see, and we both roll our eyes, and we both think that was a mistake, and we both do. I did not cut Trump slack and say, oh, he was playing 3D chess. I talked about the mistake he made. But I tend to be easier on him because I think things are going well. If everything was falling apart, then I would be picking him apart because that's what I care about, the country. I don't really care what happens to Donald Trump. I mean, he will come and go, but the question is, will our freedom survive? So I think I have that different perspective. Ben is in many ways a more political person than I am. He's more concerned about what is happening each day and what that means. And I'm more like a cultural person who thinks like, how are things going? How are things going? And right now, I think they're going really well. And so if Trump does something that I don't quite like, I'm probably going to give him a little bit more slack.
Okay. Levi says, I was recently dating a girl who you could consider agnostic. She claims that she claims was that I, as a devout Christian, had convinced myself of my belief or was brainwashed. What would you say to this?
Well, I mean, you could say the same thing to her, that she had convinced herself not to believe it. I mean, it's kind of a bum argument because how can you answer that? It's an accusation. It's not really an argument.
So how could you date that? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, she's not really arguing in any responsible way. She's not saying, well, this is my problem with your philosophy. What is your answer to that? You can't answer. I always tell people not to do this to your opponents because it makes you ignorant. You don't say to someone, oh, you're just saying that because you're a woman. You're just saying that because you're white. You're just saying that because you come from this town instead of that town. That's essentially what she's doing. You're saying you just convinced yourself of that. How do you answer that? No, I didn't. Oh yeah, no, I didn't. You can't really. There's no place to get purchase there. If what she says is she says, how can you possibly believe this, or this? Well, then you have to answer that. You have to, you're being addressed with respect and you should answer with respect.
All right. Oscar says, as a person who has most of his family waiting 30 plus years in Mexico, I find it insulting that others can come here illegally and stay. Do you think that this is an issue that will bring Hispanics to the right?
Man, I hope so, because it's so true. I mean, it is so true. In other words, if you are willing to break the law, you can beat out the person that we want, who is the person from Mexico who follows the law, who obeys the law. It's insane. You know, we understand, we want people who can assimilate. We want people who can become part of America. We want people who will be proud to be Americans. A guy in Mexico who's willing to obey the law and wait it out and get here is probably a person like that, where a guy who sneaks across is less likely to be that person. I'm not saying that none of them would be, but he's less likely to be that person because he's already broken our laws and treated us with disrespect. It's infuriating. And the fact that both Republicans and Democrats have been sitting on this for decades is absurd.
That was it. That was our final
That was
question.
it? Oh my God.
We're done with this episode of The Conversation.
Flew by.
Thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure.
It was fascinating. Lots of good questions that we rolled through
Yeah.
today. Thank you everyone for your participation and for watching. Remember to subscribe to dailywire.com now so you can join us for next month's episode of The Conversation on Tuesday, August 21st at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific, featuring Michael Knowles. I mean, really, you should just become a subscriber.
Of course.
So you can just harass him with questions.
And you get the Leftist Tears tumbler.
If you sign up for a year, you get this gorgeous tumbler, folks.
What are you waiting for?
Don't miss out. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Alicia Krause, and I'll see you next time.